The Albanese government's announcement of a $7.2 billion funding package towards the Bruce Highway is being welcomed by Roads Australia. But it is warning continued investment into transport networks are required. Joining me live is Roads Australia Chief Executive Officer Ehssan Veiszadeh. Welcome to the show, Ehssan. So I was just reading through some of the reports from your organisation, and the numbers are pretty concerning.
Absolutely, Leigh. Last year was a horrific year on the record for our road toll across the nation. We had more than 1,300 people lose their lives. That's 6.1% increase over the prior year. And the trend post-COVID has been really, really poor. And it's a combination of poor driver behaviour, but also a lack of investment on our roads, which makes yesterday's announcement in Queensland by the Prime Minister such a wonderful, wonderful announcement. This money that's been found by the federal government in a fiscally constrained environment, in difficult economic conditions, $7.2 billion is not easy to find. And so we have to commend the federal government and also the many organisations that have been calling for this funding, the many road safety organisations, local mayors, councils, and the local government, the state government, for securing this funding, which will go a long way in tackling that fatal hotspot, the Bruce Highway, 41 people losing their lives last year there in Queensland. This is very, very welcome news, this funding.
So what needs to happen to ensure that the upgrade project is successfully implemented?
That's a very good question, Leigh, and that's something that Roads Australia is focused on at the moment with the Transport Department in Queensland and our members. So many of the Tier 2 and Tier 3 construction firms will benefit from this funding. They will be the ones that will deliver this work, and they will very thankfully be delivering this work on behalf of the community and the government. But we have to ensure that it happens in a way that provides value for money to the taxpayer and happens very efficiently and very quickly. So the way this is staged, the way the procurement happens is going to be crucial. What has been very heartening for us at Roads Australia to hear is that the federal government has moved away from the previous funding arrangements with the states where it used to be very prescriptive about the scope around these projects. Back in the prior kind of funding arrangements, state governments had to contend with very defined scoping and funding arrangements with the federal government, with the intention from the federal government being that we would keep things within budget. That had the opposite outcome, actually, that we did see scope creep and we did see funding creep and timelines creeping. Now the federal government, under the new funding arrangements, is much more focused on outcomes. This particular announcement has basically told the state government in Queensland that, look, these are the outcomes we want to get to. Safer roads in these particular hotspots. It is now up to you as the experts with the industry to come up with how this will be delivered. And that is good news, I think, for the taxpayer, for the people of Queensland, to ensure that these projects happen, these funding commitments turn into actual work on the ground, and that we do it as efficiently as possible.
Speaking of that, how do our roads and the way they're managed compare to other countries?
That's a very good question. As you and I were chatting offline before, I think it's all very much relative. You know, where I was born in Iran, driver behaviour, the road kind of investment framework is, completely on a different scale to Australia. You know, when you travel back from those parts of the world, and I hope you don't mind me saying, you just travel back from a different part of the world in South America, I believe.
Yes.
Correct. Your behaviour almost changes.
Those Peruvian potholes.
Exactly, Peruvian potholes and dodging, cars, even where there are, you might assume, is a safe place to cross the road. So we are actually, I think we should be incredibly grateful that we have come a long way in terms of the condition of our roads comparably to other countries, the driver behaviour in terms of accepting that seatbelts are a must. The only thing I would say is that, sadly, over the last couple of years, post-COVID, we have actually gone backwards around the driver behaviour angle. People are actually flouting the law much more than they used to, and I think policymakers are a bit perplexed by why this is. Some contend that this might be because people were, responding to all of the requirements around COVID and restrictions, and now they're going the opposite direction and thinking that, they're the only safe driver on the road. So seat belts, speed limits, drink driving, helmets, if you're driving a motorbike, those stats are actually going backwards. So even though we are ahead of other countries around the world, thankfully so, we do need to keep an eye on those stats, and we also at the same time need to keep an eye on the fact that due to our climate situation, we are seeing much more flooding, we are seeing much more hazards on our roads, we are seeing much more load on the freight network. So we need to invest much more in maintaining our roads than before. And there is a backlog across a number of states. So this funding will go a long way in Queensland, but we need to see the same level of commitment and funding across the country, in New South Wales, in Victoria, in other parts of the road corridors, to ensure that we are all kept safe.
Thanks so much for those important points. Ehssan Veiszadeh, CEO of Roads Australia.